quite a few things done. I got the sprocket all finished up. It's good enough. It's ready to rock and roll. I just need to get these are just temporary bolts because they're really long. And get some shorter bolts for it, lock washers and all that kind of stuff. So this is basically all done. Just needs to be keyed in and hooked up to the motor. We're still going to be doing this reinforcement idea. Right now I'm just trying to get all the loose ends taken care of. It don't look too bad if you're looking at the top. I don't see any hopping. Very little. It's good enough. It's within a couple thousandths, I believe, when I indicated it. Although I was having trouble with the indicator because it kept wanting to push away like that. I gotta tighten up the base or something. But it's running pretty true. It's good enough. So we're moving on to the next part, and that would be the basket, or the frame. It used to be the basket. We're moving on to the frame part. So that's the next step. We'll clue you in as soon as I got the parts and what we're going to be doing to this. Okay, I got back from Lowe's. I got my 1x1. I cut 2 pieces. I cut a piece to fit in here, but you notice it doesn't sit all the way down. It doesn't sit all the way at the top because I was having problems because of the welding, so I just had to keep grinding it, and then ended up that way. So it's gonna do what it's intended to do. It's intended to be a spacer. So I just glued it with some of that construction glue. I'll just let it sit overnight. Hopefully it'll hold. I just want it to hold long enough where I can slip it on and start drilling it, so it doesn't fall down. Because that's perfect, so it doesn't get cocked. Something about cocking I don't like. Okay, and then I have this other piece. I don't know if you can see the line on it, but the shorter piece, we're gonna junk that. We're gonna keep the bigger piece, and that is gonna strap over on this side. See if I can sit in there. Over on this side, and it's gonna slip over this, and it's gonna have a bolt through it where the bolt comes through, so it act like a clamp. Okay, so see, I glued that and clamped it. It's been sitting for almost 24 hours, so let's see what happens. This damn watch. I'm gonna get me a new watch. Oh, it seemed like that construction glue worked. It's on there pretty sturdy. Sturdy, that is. So my next step now is to see if that slides on and if we can get that assembled. It went on with no problems. It slid right on. One thing I do suggest is use a good punch, a long punch, you know, the proper size to line up the holes. It made it a lot easier. And the bottom hole, when you go to put it in, just lift up on it a little bit and it'll slide right in. Or the top hole, either or. I haven't tightened it yet, so that'll be the next step. Go ahead and tighten it. That piece that I glued in with that construction glue, it didn't move a bit. It just slid right on. It's perfect. So when you glue that, just make sure that it's all even. You don't want anything, you know, being uneven, so when you go to slide this on, it won't slide on right. So that's real important. And I just clamped it and let it set overnight. Almost 24 hours, so I didn't look at the label or anything, but this is what I used. Construction adhesive. They told me it bonds just about anything you want to bond. I go, okay. He said for your application it'll work just fine, and it did. So all that's left is to cut this and to drill the hole. So I think I'm going to drill the hole first because that's going to be the biggest deal. Okay, what I decided to do is to measure it and get it where it's centered to this side as much as possible. And I'm gonna center punch it, and I'm gonna drill it with a very small drill. And my plan is to go through this bar through both sides and into the first side of the spacer. Then take it apart and see where my line is going towards this 3/4 inch back here. The reason why I'm going with the smaller one, so that way if I need to change my trajectory a little bit, I'll be able to do that. So that's how we're gonna work at this, because this kind of slants a little bit, but it looks kind of straight here. So we'll give it a shot. Well, there's the first hole. So now I'm ready to take it off and see how we're lined up on the other side. But we'll slide this on. Slightly. Okay. Let's see. Center punch. There we go. There's the other bolt. I just had it in my hand. Oh, there it is. Hate those kind of days. Like I said, you may have to lift up on this a little bit to get it through. It's no big deal. No different than it usually is. It does fit a lot tighter at the top than what it used to. Okay, here we go. Get on this side. Oh, it broke off. Not really. Came loose. I don't have a chuck. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the alignment. I'm gonna see if I can get my. See if this doesn't go through. And it does. Make sure it goes through this way. And it does. So we're pretty much lined up now. Just to be safe, I'm going to stick this through the hole. And then I'm going to tighten up the bolts. Okay, you can see the bolts in. I just worked the drill both ways real good. You know, kind of move it around like that in the hole. Just widen it up, and it slid right through. So this is really solid now. It's real solid. The first keyway, the 1 inch. Now we're getting ready to cut 1.5 inch. Which is supposed to be this undersize, which I don't believe. Okay, we'll put this So here, let's see what we got. Okay, that's 1 1/4. Let's see what that is. Close enough. Yeah, I just kind of hold it down and place the blade and tighten it. Okay, yabba dabba do. Make sure it's tight or something. We're good. Yabba dabba do. Ooh, hot. Now to the grain. For the grain, got these burrs on them. We're going to take care of. See that? Let's see how it fits now. I think it should fit in there just fine. Put it in there. Okay, I got it all the way up against the bushing. That's what I want. Slip right in. Now, okay, that's exactly what I want. I don't want any of that pin sticking out, and I want to make sure it's on the pin. And it is. We're good. So now we can tighten that up and do the sprocket next. Okay, I got the other one ready for the sprocket, which is the 1.5 inches. Squirt a little oil in there. Let's make sure I can. I want that one up against that one. Now I want to take our sprocket, spin it around the right way, and slide it onto the keyway, like that. And now we want to take, well, now we want to take we're going to go in there and we're just going to couple pings in there. That's going to keep it from wanting to come out, but it shouldn't because it's on a separate keyway. And now we're going to slip on. Slip it on this way. Now we're going to slip this on up to the keyway. Okay, so I got the sprocket on the keyway and it moves. That's what we want. And we got about a 1/2 inch sticking out for adjustment this way. And we got ourselves our bushing, which is going to go up against the keyway, plus I pinged it. So now we're ready to tighten up the sprocket and the bushing. Okay, so I got the set screws in with some grease on them for the sprocket. They're not tightened, but they're almost there, so I can still move the sprocket. Well, I need to loosen it up a little bit more. Maybe I said a little bit too tight. So I should still be able to move the sprocket. Yeah, this one's tight. There we go. There we go. So now I'll still be able to move the sprocket back and forth. What I want to do though is I want to lock this bushing into place. Well, this is going to work, but it's just aluminum. So I should be able to cut through it that quickly. Behind the noise. So everything my dad had is left-handed. one side. SpaghettiOs. When the SpaghettiOs are done, just file it up. So we cut all these parts off. We don't need them. What we need is the cage. And that is going to get down right there. All the way to there. And the back of the battery will sit right about here. So the only problem with this is have to get access to the key. You have to do it from the other side and walk around this side and this side. I could flip the battery over because I think you can slide it in on both sides. But anyway, that's where it's going. And what we're going to do is we're going to pre-drill our holes, and then we're going to clamp it up with some C-clamps. And we're going to get in there and drill some holes with a smaller bit. And we're going to use these number 12s. Quarter-inch washer tool, I think that'll be fine. We're going to use these number 12 screws. So we'll pre-drill it. We're going to set it up on 2 chairs. I got 4 chairs. I'll set them on 4 chairs or something. Put 2 chairs in the back and one in the front. So it'll be up high enough where I can get underneath it. And pre-drill the one hole and put a screw in it. I plan on putting, I think, 5 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. 5, maybe 6. And I also ordered some Velcro cinch straps. They're 2 inches wide and 36 inches long. So we're going to safety strap this whole cage to the bar. Just in case it does decide, hey, I'm falling apart, the strap will keep the battery from falling out on the ground. Okay, I had the battery track put in it because I wanted to check something before I go assemble it. I wanted to check how much distance there is in between the battery and the top where I'm putting the screws, and there's plenty of room, so it's not an issue. Just want to give you a little heads up how I'm holding this battery cage up. You know, I cut it all the way I needed to cut it to make it work. So I just put a C-clamp on it right here to hold it in place. I'm going to put one more right here so I can go ahead and start screwing in the screws. I got number 12s with washers, and we're going to screw them in. And there's plenty of clearance for the battery at the top, so it's not a problem there. And I'll put the battery in. Once that's done, I'll show you a shot of that, and then we'll end the episode. Well, there's all the holes. All the bolts are in for the battery holder. Now it's just a matter of putting in the tray and then walking in the battery. Now the battery rack is all in. Let's see how difficult it is to put it in. It's in the lock position, so let me take that. Get the lock. That was okay. I used to see my old batteries. I think we just sit down there like that, and slide it in, and lock it. Like I said, that's the only bad thing about this. I have to walk around the other side of the bike, but it's easy to get to. There you go. It's locked. That's not so bad. I don't know if you need this to turn it on. Or, I think so. I think that's turned on. You can't take it out. Yeah. So you have to leave the key in it to turn it on. That's okay. Okay. Okay, well this is the battery came out pretty good. I'm very pleased with it. Okay, I just finished bench wiring this all up, and I just used temporary, get this out of the way. I just use wire nuts as temporaries just to sort out all the wires, make sure I get everything wired up right. And I'll kind of walk through with what I got going here. First of all, the motor I wired up. But I wired it up in reverse polarities because I want this to run counterclockwise, not clockwise, because the way it's being mounted, the way it's being used. Next thing is the battery. Red to red, black to black, that's for the battery tail. The next thing was the 3-wire, I can find it, here it is. These 3 wires right here for the thumb throttle, black to black, red to red, and the other wire can be a different color wire. It doesn't really matter. It's the sensor wire. That's the wire that's the return wire for the voltage for your variable speed. That the black and red is your voltage coming up. So it's pretty simple. Don't be intimidated by it if it's a different color wire. Then the next thing is the on and off ignition switch, and then the next thing is a battery indicator. And that battery indicator gets hooked up to the indicator. It'll be a plug saying indicator. That's where the battery monitor gets hooked up to. And then of course the switch gets hooked up to the power I think you call it a power lock switch, which is this. So everything's wired up, so battery's plugged in. Let's turn it on and see what happens next. Okay, I got the thumb throttle here. Thumb throttle's there. So to turn on the system, the first thing you gotta do is turn on the battery. It's on. The next thing you need to do is turn on the ignition. It's on. Oh, looky here. What do we got? Battery 100%. That's good. Now the next thing is, does the motor work? Motor's working. So we're all good. I just found out I put the kill switch, what I do with it, this guy, I hooked it up and it worked. I turned it on, I turned it off. The only problem was when I hooked it up the way it's, you know, like black to black and red stripe yellow to red, the On was off and off was on. So I got to reverse the wires when I hook it up. This is nice, but I don't like the idea of having to carry two separate keys. You can't put them on the same keychain. They got to be separate because they're going in separate places. I don't like that idea. I'd rather just keep the one key and just have a simple on-off switch. So I think this is what I'm going to do. Well, there's the controller sitting in a little rubber vise here, being all wired up. I got the battery wired. I got the battery indicator wired. I got the thumb throttle all wired. The only thing that's left now is the power switch, which I'm going to hook it up to this one. So I need to go get some wire, the right gauge wire for this. This gauge wire is a lot smaller. This one's bigger. So I'm going to get a little bit heavier gauge wire for that on and off switch. So and also I'm going to try and find me some aluminum, a little flat piece like about 5 inches by 5 inches, 5 by 5. That would be perfect, and I can cut it to the size I need. First thing I have to cut out is this size right here for the bezel, so when you pop it in, it stays in. This old piece of plastic bumper, right now here, the one I almost ran over and got myself killed on. I said I might be able to use it someday. Well, looks like it's that someday. I might be able to cut this and make my bezel for it, cut it when I need it, and heat it up and bend it. If it's bendable, I don't know. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my heat gun and heat it up and see if I can bend it. It bends. Heat it up and it bends. And once it cools, it stays there. So I guess I'm going to be cutting this out and using this piece right here. Well, here's my template. I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to cut all this out. Cut all this out. And then this will fit inside that as a bezel. It's the right thickness. And it'll snap right in. And we're going to heat this up. And we're going to bend it. And then we're going to put file into some slots. So once we bend it, it will get strapped with this cinch strap. Just cinch it up and it'll stay right there. And I got a little piece of rubber to put on here too. So looks like we got ourselves a winner here. And there's the finished product. Plastic. I just cut it out real fast, did it real fast. I could have done a lot better job on the top of it, but that's where it's going to go. It'll play right there. It's not going to go anywhere. This is not how to wire up a bike. I'm learning the hard way. So the best way to do it is get all your things mounted first. You know, battery indicator, your throttle, your power switch, and then start running your wires down. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to use a terminal block. And I'm going to put the terminal block probably somewhere in here. And everything will go to a terminal block, or maybe down in here. Everything will go to the terminal block from the handlebars to a terminal block. But the motor and battery, they're fine by themselves. They don't need to be on the terminal block. So I'm only putting the power switch, the battery indicator, and they say it's a light indicator, and the thumb throttle. I'm going to be putting that all on a terminal block. So that is 7 wires. So I need at least a 7 wire terminal block or 8 wire, somewhere in there, and mount that, and then run the other wires. So it'd be much easier to do it that way. That way they all can use basically the same type of terminals, the ring terminals. Easy to take in on and off. And the nice thing about it, if you need to check any values of voltages, you have the opportunity to do that without having to take the wires apart. You just go right to the terminal and check them. Now, the bad things about a terminal block is they tend to crack. And the other thing is you have to cover them to keep the water off of them. I don't plan on beating a lot of water to this thing anyway, but I'll need some kind of a cover to go over it to keep, water from splashing on it. That's the way I'm going to do it. I think it's going to look very clean when I'm done with it. That's the whole idea. I want it to look real clean.